Welcome to NAMI Westchester's first monthly presentation. This month's topic is Your Child's Mental Health and School Reopening. NAMI Westchester is a nonprofit organization providing resources, support, and education to families and those living with a mental illness. We operate a helpline Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. To find more information about our organization, please go to our website at www.namiwestchester.org. Our presenters this evening are Andrew Ecker. He's the coordinator of the Guidance and Child Studies Center at Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES. Miriam Walsh. She is a partner at Littman Crooks and head of their special education department and a NAMI Westchester board member. And Marie Considine, who is our director of development and the parent of school-age children. With that, I would like to turn the program over to Andrew.
Hello, my name is Andrew Ecker, and I'm coordinator of the Guidance and Child Studies Center at Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES. Thank you so much for joining this evening. I was asked to come here and share and speak to two questions, 2 points. The first is what parents can expect when school reopens this fall. And the second is warning signs that parents and families should be looking for in their child. A little background on me. I am not a mental health clinician. I was a teacher and an administrator at a therapeutic residential high school. And my expertise and background is really on the intersection of schools, special education, equity, and mental health. So I'm going to be speaking a bit broadly based on the guidance in the fields of education and school mental health, as well as some of the background about the context that we're in as it pertains to New York State Education Department and some of the reopening efforts that are taking place in our region. So when it comes to what parents can expect when school reopens, I think about this through 3 guiding principles. First, and I think this is really important, is that we all have the same goals and the same purpose. So no matter our role, our goals are always about the health, safety, wellness, education, and the best future that's possible for our youth, for our students, our children. We all have that same goal and that purpose. And no matter what we are doing, no matter what role we have, I think it's really critical, especially during these most challenging times, that we stay grounded in our shared goal and our shared purpose. The second guiding principle is based on that goal and purpose. We are all in this together. And the work that we are doing couldn't happen without each of us. So schools wouldn't be possible without our students. It wouldn't be possible without parents, without families, without our teachers, staff, mental health clinicians, everyone who works in the school. It just wouldn't be possible. And the third guiding principle is that this is very hard, and we must acknowledge our context.
Thank you, Andrew. And now we'll hear from Miriam Walsh, who is partner and head of special ed department for Littman Crooks and NAMI Westchester board member. Miriam?
Thank you. And thank you so much, Andrew. I think you left at a perfect spot for me to take over, talking about some of the early warning signs. And just to follow up on Sharon's background, I've been a NAMI board member now for, I think, 2 years and been involved with NAMI for over 3 years. I've served on the school district side in a school board for 9 years. I've worked on the school district attorney, and I've been representing parents on behalf of students with disabilities for 8 years, over 8 years now. And so I'm here to really talk about, to the parents here and to the school districts, about, especially to the parents, how to advocate for your child if you see these warning signs. And I completely agree with Andrew. We are in this together. This is really hard for everybody. And, you know, the bar is a little bit different now because there's so much social isolation. What we used to see as a socially isolated teen is now just the norm because there's been so much isolation. So I think that's important to note. However, there are going to be signs you notice as a parent. I'm a parent of 4, in addition to ages, the youngest is 18, the oldest is a physician who's 38. So I've seen the gamut, and I just use my son as an example of the one who's 18 and is remoting at college. You know, I know he's isolated because he has been in quarantine since March. He's gone on a few family vacations, but if I see him laughing, I see him talking to his friends online, I see him eating, his sleep schedule is way off. You know, he goes to sleep at 3 in the morning, but that's unfortunately, that's in these times when it's typical. And I've tried to get him to sleep. So I'm just using that as a benchmark as a parent and talking to each of you but if I saw him talking about death, if I saw him not laughing with his friends, if I saw him cutting himself, if I saw him, using suicidal thoughts, if I was, not leaving his room to even socialize with us, I would be concerned and I would be taking steps. And that's what as parents we need to know. The norm is different, but yet there are definite warning signs that we all can be aware of and be educated. I'm an attorney. I am not like Andrew, I'm not a practicing psychologist. I'm not a clinician, so I'm not giving advice about mental health, but I am a NAMI board member. I have some training. I'm trained facilitator, and I am a licensed attorney. So just to be careful, we have to be careful of boundaries, but remember, none of this is legal advice. It is just some general information on education. So if you see these early warning signs, as Andrew, it's really important to work with your school district and talk to your school district. School districts, it's really one positive that's come out of this pandemic, which isn't really a positive, but there is a great awareness of social emotional learning, the need for protecting our social emotional health, all of us. And so I think that's a really positive sign. So if you do see these signs, I'm going to give you some of the frameworks, the legal frameworks to guide you. The first step is really talking to your students' teachers, talking to the psychologist, talking to the guidance counselor. And there are general education interventions that school districts will give. And, if you see a child, I'm just giving one example of a student cutting themselves, of course, you will also go to your private provider, but you should let the school district know as well. And the school district is likely to do, child study team meetings, building level meetings. They may have a plan of action. There may be building level counseling, peer support groups, lunch groups. These are all virtual or sort of in the hybrid mode at this time, check-ins with the guidance counselor. I'm going to talk a little bit about the response to intervention model, which definitely has some drawbacks in the social emotional realm, but some districts do have tiered support. There could be attendance interventions for students who aren't attending virtually, and then referrals to communication to private therapists. So it's important not just, as I noted, to reach out to the school district on these warning signs, reach out to a private clinician as well, because the school district there are obligations, but you are going to need some private support as well. You can also call the helpline at NAMI Westchester if you have any questions, and there are other resources available. So it's important to know you're not alone in this at all. So just to give you the legal background, school districts do have an obligation to identify students with disabilities, identify, evaluate, and educate students who may have disabilities. A mental health condition can be a disability. It isn't always. There has to be a educational impact, and there also has to be the need for special education services. But it's important to note that districts do have this, what's called the child find obligation and it does extend to children, even who are suspected of having a disability and the need for special education, and will definitely include students with mental health conditions. And one reason I went into this field, because I just saw especially from the parent side, I saw such a need for working with students with mental health conditions, because not for any lack of intent to help students from school districts, but just because of the fact that many districts are overwhelmed, and the students who are internalizing and who are very perhaps high achieving cognitively and getting passing grades, in fact getting straight A's, may not always be identified by the school districts as needing support or special education, and they certainly do fall within that category. And these students can often change in a semester from being a straight A student to someone who needs to be in the hospital. So it's really important for parents to communicate with districts and communicate with private providers on how to get the help students need. And in this virtual environment, it's very different. but we all still have the same needs and the same, the same interventions can be in place. They just might be virtual. And the reason there's such a challenge in public schools sometimes with the mental health conditions, unfortunately, there is still a stigma. I helped to do the training with Ending the Silence on suicide prevention in school districts. So if you're a school district representative on this and you want to do some training on suicide prevention to students, make sure you call Sharon at the number there, 592-5458 on this free program for school districts. So it's very key right now. But, often parents and school districts may not see mental health as a special education issue or the disability that a school can help with, and there is still a stigma. And schools are not always set up to focus on a child's mental health conditions. And if they are, they're really geared more to the general building level interventions, which can be helpful, but they're not going to really address some of the need for a therapeutic support program or more intensive needs. Yet these obligations are real in the law, and I have seen that school district staff do often underestimate the school district's obligation, and often do not always refer to special education, may really focus on the building level and focus on the referrals to private, which aren't always enough, especially when there's a real crisis. So parents really need to understand this and make sure they can be their child's advocate. And really, depending on the age, it can be from elementary school up to high school, that child may need these services. So just to give you the basic statutory frameworks from an attorney's perspective, the two laws we're looking at is there's Section 504, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. And this is a civil rights law that is really focused on anti-discrimination, but it does give students accommodations, and it really has a very broad definition of students it would cover. It's going to be students who have a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits a major life activity. And that certainly would cover anxiety, it would cover depression, it would cover ADHD, and that's going to be a student who doesn't necessarily need special education services, but may need some accommodations. They may need extra time on either assignments or on testing. They may need someone to just facilitate them getting to school. They may need building level counseling. And there are a lot of accommodations that can be built into a 504 plan that will help a student with a mental health condition. So that's really important to note. If your student is qualified under 504, and you can refer your child to the district for Section 504 accommodations. And important to know this, districts can also refer, but sometimes it doesn't always happen from the district point of view. They have a different lens. And I always say that to parents as well, that the lens a parent sees of their child is going to be different from what the school district sees, just necessarily, because the school district is dealing with 1,000 students. You have one, or you may have several children, but you really have, as a parent, you're focusing on your child. So Section 504 is a very powerful statute, and if your child is eligible, they will have a 504 plan that's written. It will include recent evaluations, it will include assessment results, and what the determination of the physical or mental impairment is, and then program accommodations. And there's a great deal of flexibility on what kind of accommodations and services can be offered. There's a really good guidance. There's some good guidance from the Department of Education on ADHD and Section 504 from 2015, I believe, and it gives some questions and answers on ADHD and some misconceptions on 504, because you can be a straight A student and still have a 504 plan, still be eligible for 504, because the question is not educational impact. The question is, do you have a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits a major life activity, which is very different. So you could end up with good grades, but still be really struggling with your physical or mental health impairment. You may be taking medication, or, for example, and the school district cannot consider that. So there is some tension there with 504 and parents, and unfortunately, this process can get adversarial both under 504, and we're going to talk about the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. But our goal in this session is really to talk about the collaborative process and how to help your child if you think that your child needs help. So as far as advocacy, for some students, then it's not that you have to go through 504 to get to the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, but there's the statute in the IDA, which is termed Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, was passed in 1975, and the purpose of the IDA is to really ensure that all students with disabilities have available to them a free, appropriate public education. And I talked a little bit about the child find obligation, and this statute has a narrower coverage of students than 504, but it does offer more services and a greater mandate for what districts have to do. And to be eligible under IDA, your student has to have, there are 13 categories of disability, and the two that really apply to emotional difficulties or mental health would be generally either another health impairment or an emotional, what is termed under the statute as an emotional disturbance, which is very stigmatizing, but I really call it more an emotional disability. And under those, your child has to have one of these 13 categories of disability, and your child must need special education related services, and there must be an educational impact. So that's going to be where some of the questions arise with the mental health condition. Because a lot of school districts will really want to deal with the mental health conditions with building level interventions, but that's just not always going to be enough. And it's important to know that there are these statutes that do cover individuals with disabilities, with mental health conditions. So just to give you an idea of what other health impairment means, it's really the definition is geared toward, it's geared to health conditions, but it can certainly cover anxiety, ADHD, it can cover depression. It means having limited strength, vitality, or alertness, or a heightened alertness to environmental stimuli that results in limited alertness with respect to the educational environment. And it can certainly occur in addition to the virtual environment. And ADHD is specifically included, but it doesn't preclude things like anxiety or depression. And that certainly both any kind of mental health condition could fall under other health impairment if there's an educational impact. And some of the tension comes up if a student has been getting good grades, but say then is unable to attend school due to depression. Does the child have a disability? Do they need special education services? And that's source of a lot of questions, but if you believe your child does need these services, then you should be that advocate. You can be the one to advocate. The term emotional disturbance is a little bit longer, and it is kind of worth going through because that is the category that a lot of students with mental health conditions will fall into. And a student has to have a condition exhibiting one or more of the following characteristics, and it has to adverse to a marked degree for a long period of time, and it must adversely affect a child's educational performance. And it can be any one of these: ability to learn that cannot be explained by intellectual, sensory, or health factors, inability to build or maintain satisfactory interpersonal relationships with peers and teachers, inappropriate types of behavior or feelings under normal circumstances, a general pervasive mood of unhappiness or depression, or a tendency to develop physical symptoms or fears associated with personal or school problems. And again, it's to a marked degree and for a long period of time. So if your child has one of these characteristics and it's only persisted over the COVID period, it may not rise to the level of emotional disability, but it certainly may be worth exploring if it goes on for 6 months or longer. And again, we're in a very unusual period of time. There's a lot more isolation, but if you're seeing a different response to COVID than you may expect, there are still norms of behavior in these times, so it is worth exploring whether your child does have an emotional disability. And again, there's no stigma to this. Everything stays confidential in a student's records. And you just really want to get your child the support he or she needs. If your child does need to be hospitalized, it is worth exploring the referral process, either under 504 or the IDA. So what does this necessarily mean if your child does qualify under 504 or IDA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act? We talked a little bit about 504. It's going to mean accommodations, not necessarily extensive services. But if your child is eligible under the IDA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, your child will receive an IEP, Individualized Education Program, which will list evaluations done. It will list the student's present levels of performance, and then it will have goals the child should achieve, and it will have a program. And that can mean anything. The program can really be anything from a general education program with related services or with some consultant teacher supports. It could be direct or indirect. Consultant teacher would be a teacher helping out, and all these can be done in the remote setting as well, or in the hybrid setting. It could mean resource room, related services of counseling. There are some special therapeutic support program classes that each district has. Some districts have developed their own. And then there are some districts that have very specialized programs. There are also the BOCES programs, which Andrew can talk about if you have any questions, that do have some very good specialized therapeutic support programs that other districts can refer to because they're necessarily collaborative. There can be home instruction, and home instruction right now is really going to be remote instruction. It's not going to be at home. And there are also residential programs. So there are also special private schools that are on a state-approved list. The Committee on Special Education can only place students in state-approved schools. They cannot place in private schools, but there is a process for private school reimbursement. We won't go into all that right now, but it's important to note. I think the key here is, I think, to really work collaboratively with your school district. This I want to kind of close with, and we'll turn to Marie. You want to be aware of the early mental health warning signs that Andrew talked about. Keep the school apprised of them. Seek help from parent groups such as NAMI. Get medical help if needed. Allow your physicians and doctors and therapists to share information with the schools. You may be cautious and not trust for some reason, but you can set some parameters. But if you can't share the information, you can't expect the school to act on it. And it's really important to do that. And in fact, it's sort of in every kind of process and impartial hearing, you do have to cooperate with the school district. So work with the school to get the supports in school, provide prompt consent for evaluations if needed. And, the individuals in the school district are trying to help. They really are. There's a lot of distrust and that can develop and misunderstandings, but if you work collaboratively, especially in these times, it's very important. And make sure you do review your school district reopening plan. Review the state plan, which I have right here. I think it's 146 pages, but review your own district's plan. And then with this proactive approach and cooperation, really can make a difference in students' lives. So our goal is to forge partnerships here. So now I'm going to turn it over to Marie, and then we can be available for questions after. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Marie. We have Marie Considine, who is our Director of Development and the mother of 3 school-age children. Take it away, Marie.
Hi, thanks. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening. Marion and Andrew were terrific. So I'm happy to follow them, and everything that they say I can completely relate to. But I'm also going to give a disclaimer, like they did, that I am not a mental health professional. I just play one on Zoom. No, just kidding. But I am a parent of 4 children. One is college age. That's why Sharon didn't count him in the school, in the student category, but he certainly is a student. So I have 1 in college, 2 in high school, and 1 in middle school. So we kind of run the gamut. Certainly doesn't make me a parenting expert, but I do have experience in parenting. So what I figured when I tried to kind of put some of my thoughts together in how I've been preparing for this new school year, I really tried to do it in 3 different ways. One is to prepare myself. One is to prepare my children. And then one is what we're doing when school does start, in whatever capacity that is. So as far as preparing myself, which then, domino effect, educates my family, prepares them. I joined our district's reentry task force. So I'm a member of, as you can imagine, with multiple children, I'm a member of several PTAs and PTSAs. So our PTSA was asked to send a representative to be a part of our task force. Now, not all districts had as large of a task force as our district did, but we had I think it's more than 70 members on our reentry task force. And we've been working for the past 3 months, several Zooms a month, and a lot of, meetings and research on the back end. We had teachers, we had students, we had parents such as myself, district professionals, transportation people, all of that. So I've been really involved in what the plans are and how they're being developed, and had input in it from a parent's perspective, but also, of course, I can't take off my NAMI Westchester hat, right? So I'm always thinking about what is going on in terms of mental health, how are we watching, who's being trained, One of the hybrid scenarios that we had first bounced around was half of the children would go back to school 1 week and the other half the following week in order to really distance, in order to clean the school building on the weekend. But what we talked about, and the district came to realize, not that they're dummies, I mean, just, through the conversation, was that if teachers don't see students for 2 weeks, that's not really healthy. They might miss something. One of the things that Marian mentioned, actually both Marian and Andrew mentioned, was keeping an outlook for warning signs, and that's something that NAMI Westchester teaches in our Ending the Silence course. So I am a trained lead presenter in Ending the Silence, and that's the program where we go into schools, middle schools and high schools, and teach students all about mental health. Teach them the warning signs and teach them how to identify a trusted adult, which is something school districts are talking about now too. So actually, if you wanted to follow up and learn a little bit more about that, go to the NAMIWestchester.org website and click on Youth. And once you're on there, you'll see a sheet that says How to Help a Friend, and that lists all the warning signs. And it's something really to look out for us as parents. I've shared it with teachers. My district brings in NAMI Westchester's Ending the Silence program for the middle school and the high school. So our kids are educated and the teachers are too. We also, sometimes I say we, meaning parents. My next sentence, we, meaning NAMI Westchester, also provide an Ending the Silence for staff and for parents. So if you want that brought into your district, talk to your health teacher, talk to your principal. Okay, back to my parent hat. So I've been attending all these district meetings as far as the task force, but also our district has put out a number of community forums. They're trying very, very hard to be transparent and let parents in on what the decisions are and what struggles they're having. And there have been surveys that the task force has put together, the district has put out, that has solicited parent information. And definitely the parents have appreciated that. Are they happy with every single decision? No. Is there any great decision? No. I mean, none of this is perfect, right? None of us would choose this. But being transparent and having good communication really makes a world of difference. So what I'm also doing for my children is, especially from a middle schooler, in our middle school, 5th and 6th grade is in one wing, 7th and 8th is in another. So although he's not going to a new school, he'll be transitioning to a new wing. So whether he goes in to school or not, depending on what happens in the next few weeks, he's never been on that side of the school and is not familiar with those teachers because he hasn't really interacted them in the hallway. So that's something that as soon as he gets assigned to teachers, I'm going to show him a do the basics, show him a picture of the teacher. Hopefully she or he will put up a Google Classroom and put out some information about themselves. I think teachers are planning to do that a little more this year than they normally would. You get all that information when your child starts kindergarten or 1st grade. The teacher writes home a letter to the new child, but the kids need it a little bit more this year than they normally would. I'm also going to be talking with those school staff members and those teachers to watch out, for some setbacks. A lot of kids have regressed since last year. Thankfully, mine didn't, but let's see how the next year plays out. I can speak to my college student and my high school and my middle schoolers that I have heard from friends who are parents that some kids have really, really struggled. Some didn't know what to do with themselves and went out at night and got into some trouble. And one was so depressed that he lost 40 pounds in, I think it was like 8 weeks. And he didn't have 40 pounds to lose. So there are a lot of things to look out for, and that comes back to the warning signs too. Our district is also really good on training teachers on the social emotional piece of it. Tonight, Zoom, it was at about 5 o'clock tonight, and I watched it before I came on here with you, was all about the social emotional needs. And the teachers, as well as the teachers' aides, will be trained on behavioral and emotional screening systems, which they hadn't been before. So they've gotten some funding to do the training for the teachers' aides too. So that's a new thing, and that's something maybe to look for in your district. Also, personally, I'm trying to put my own personal work plans in place because I have a job. So regardless of whether our district goes back to hybrid or goes fully remote, whether it's immediately, if they change that in the next couple of weeks, or if it happens in October or January or March, I need to think now about what my life is going to look like. So my kids are working remotely, if they are, how is that going to look? My high schoolers can't really help my 7th grader because they're doing their own work. So how is that going to play out for our family? So putting those kinds of plans in place will reduce some stress on yourself and on your kids. And that kind of segues into me talking about how I'm preparing my children. So as Andrew said, it's hard, and I think it's important to let your kids know that it is hard. We feel it too. It's not just them and it's not just us. We are, cliche, we are in this together. We are. It affects all of us in so many different ways. I've also tried really hard to stop saying what was normal and that this is the new normal. I know that's something that's said a lot, but it doesn't feel normal. So even mentioning that word just, you kind of cringe a little bit. So it's just new. It's just different. And that's okay. I've been encouraging them to get on what the school district is offering also. There haven't been any meetups yet, at least in our district, with teachers because the assignments haven't been made. But the principal and the vice principal have offered some Zoom meetings. So I've encouraged them to get onto that. And my husband and I have gone over the reentry plans with them. The options, the hybrid. Some families are homeschooling, and some are choosing to do full-on remote. So we've talked about what they choose. I feel like they're old enough to have some input on that. We've also talked about what their personal goals are this year. To my high schoolers, they're taking AP classes. So what is that going to look like? Someone mentioned to us, have them take their SAT exams this fall because we may have a shutdown in the winter again, and then they wouldn't have the SAT until their senior year, and that's kind of late. So we're kind of pushing up some deadlines, and that's through conversations with them and conversations they've had with friends that they've brought to me. And that's kind of a really important part too. My children talk to me a lot. Do they tell me every single thing? No, I'm not going to be naive and say that they do because I was a teenager too, but they do talk to me a lot about what they're feeling and being anxious about this school year. I mean, college looks completely different for my oldest. He's a college senior. And this year they are going back because the college campus where he goes is a big university and they have their own research facility. They do their own testing lab. They have a level 5 needle lab. So they know what they're doing. But these are college kids. So there are going to be parties and all kinds of things. So they're doing a lot of testing. He can't visit in other people's dorms. He's chosen not to do a dining plan. And he has asthma. So he's a little worried and he's been really careful all these months. But, we've done our homework and feel like we're informed enough to let him make a decision. I've also tried to put the visual in their heads in terms of what school will look like. Because when you picture something you haven't been to in a while, you picture it the way it's always been, right? One of my high schoolers said the other day, the other day in class, and he starts telling a story and he stopped in the middle of it and said, oh my gosh, that was in March. Your mind plays tricks on you sometimes. So I wanted them to really visualize being in a classroom with half the kids wearing masks. Our high school is normally an open campus. They can't go out for lunch now. They can go in the rotunda, they can go in the cafeteria or in the gym, and there's going to be plexiglass. You know, me hearing it on a Zoom is one thing, but telling it to them and having them visualize it is something that I think is really important. And also just going through their friends list. Like, who do they talk to every day? Who are they on the video games with? Who are they going for a bike ride with? You know, distancing, right? Are those in their alphabet? You know, in our district, our schools are going to be split, A through K and L through Z. Turns out a lot of their friends are in the latter part of the alphabet. So I want them to think through, really, what is school going to look like and how different will it be? And then my last part is when it's open, when they can go back to school and what that will look like. You know, again, going back to those warning signs and looking for them and being aware of their friends too. Being familiar with those mental health warning signs that they learned in Ending the Silence. You know, do you see yourself? I mean, yourself definitely, but also, do you see a friend withdrawing, changing who they hang out with, changing their music? Are they cutting, like Marian talked about? Are they starting to use some drugs or alcohol? Are they harming themselves? You know, just little nuances that they should look out for, and then have a trusted adult to talk to. Also, something we weren't really ready for when we went remote in March was real workstations at home. You know, there are 6 of us all working remotely from home, and we didn't really have 6 complete workstations. So that's something that we've had to work on and are still working on, you know, this summer to get ready for remote or hybrid. They'll need a real dedicated place to be. And now that it'll be remote and live, they need to be separate because they're going to be hearing, they're going to be on headphones and everything else. So that's, I guess my last point is about structuring their day and time management. You know, in the spring, at least when our school went remote, they didn't have to do anything at a certain time. Yes, the superintendent read a story in the morning. They really felt that was for the elementary kids. They did the Pledge of Allegiance, which they do in school, but didn't necessarily feel they needed to wake up on time to do that because nothing would happen after that. There wasn't any specific time they had to be on. But this year, it's different. They're going to have to be, whether, you know, even the days that they're remote, they'll have to be online at 8 o'clock and end at, 2:30, whatever it is. So switching that clock, like Marian said, your older child goes to sleep so late. Mine go to sleep later than I'd like them to also. And it's more so than normally going back from August to September because this has been so long. And there's just been no structure. So that's kind of where I am, just trying to keep positive and make the best of it.
Thanks, Marie. Okay, so we do have some questions. So I'm going to read the first one, and then, hopefully one of you will pop up to answer it. So this person she's planning to keep her first grade daughter home from school to do the remote learning option through our school district. She's a stay-at-home mom. Her family has kept to themselves during the pandemic. Her daughter plays in Zoom and FaceTime and with a friend, and has one friend who they let her play with, closely with that person. She is very social, but also tells people that she is having the best summer ever home with mom. And she also enjoys remote learning in the spring, although she missed her friends. So although she is a happy child, but the mother is asking how much lasting emotional damage might be caused by keeping her home from school. So, Andrew, would you like to try that one?
Sure, I'll try my best here. And I think, first, I think it's great that this person's child is expressing this, that you have those conversations. It's interesting. We talk about, I started off by mentioning the context about how hard it is. And part of this context is that some kids and some people are actually thriving during this. think about so many people who are school avoidant or who have anxiety at school, and this has been like a great thing for them. So I think socialization and those parts are so critical, but I don't want to pathologize and say that someone who's thriving during this time is off to a bad start or anything like that. I'm not an early childhood specialist and sort of referring on a bunch of these things, but I think that working with the school to ensure that what's at the essence of those social interactions. If it's not face to face, then what are the things that we can still keep doing, whether they're virtual connections or if you can have one or two friends who you see either through socially distance or something like that. But I think we're all different, and some people are doing well now. I think that's okay. And I would just it's always good to, like we've been saying, to check in with your school, with your school counselor, with the teacher for things that are age appropriate in terms of milestones and things like that. But it's okay to be different and to be doing well with this current situation, I think.
We have another question. Any insight for how to help a very sensitive 4th grade girl cope with hybrid school setup and how to handle friendships outside of school? She is perfectly happy playing with her sister and reading books, but we are concerned she has such a limited social interaction over the summer and now in school this year. Any suggestions would be welcome. Thank you. Who would like to take that one? You want to swing it again, Andrew?
Sure, I'll give it a shot. So I think, when we're trying to focus on growing a particular skill, like making friends or keeping social interactions up, let's start from what's working and start from our strengths. So I think you mentioned something about reading books or something that's high interest, maybe starting with that and using that as kind of like the way to connect with other kids where there is that shared interest. I think that anytime we're trying to work on a skill or grow something that has been difficult for us, we always want to start with our strengths and really leverage all those points. So I would say, if there's ways that this child can connect with others around a shared interest, maybe that's a good place to start and then kind of grow it from there.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was picking up on the reading books too, because the libraries have had to be closed for a long time and they can't have all the programs that they normally do. But many of them are doing virtual book clubs. So especially for young ones, because the children's librarian is hired by the library and it's a full-time position and they want to be doing some good things for kids. So look into online book clubs. Also get involved in things like Girl Scouts. Some kind of, right, like Andrew said, like shared interests. Because you can't really force friendships, as you know, as a mom, but if there's some kind of common interest that would just start the conversation, then they would find other interests, because this is a weird time that they can't go to a new classroom and make new friends. So if we can just kind of form those spaces for them, then it'll probably move a little quicker.
I can just add, Ray, I totally agree, and kudos to your daughter for having a high interest in reading. I don't think I've read a book in 5 months, so great for that, and celebrate those strengths, and yeah.
Okay, so another question. Sometimes our children are more resilient than we think, and parents who are obviously a lot more aware of the uncertainties can project their own anxiety.
Wait, what? I'm still on the call, so what? What did you say, Shisha?
Please put yourself on mute. Could you please put yourself on mute? Okay, can you guys all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Sometimes our children are more resilient than we think, and parents who are obviously a lot more aware of the uncertainties can project their own anxiety into their children. How can parents avoid doing this? Any tips?
I can take a stab at that. I do think it's really important for parents to have self-care and make sure they take care of themselves. I think children do have their own anxieties though as well, and I don't think we can say necessarily that children's anxiety is always due to parents' anxieties. And I've learned as a parent now for almost 40 years that I think, you can only do the best you can. The decisions I thought were perfect and the best ended up always not being perfect. The times I thought my child was anxious, maybe they weren't. The times I thought that they were not having issues, they were. So there's no perfect parenting here. But I think we have to realize as parents, we are doing the impossible in some instances, trying to, work a full-time job, take care of our children, and also, in addition, be a parent, and take care of your children as a parent and then take care of your child as a teacher. So we're doing a lot, and give yourself a little bit of a break. And, what I've tried to do, as Marie mentioned, is focus on the positive, help your child get excited about school again, whatever it's going to look like. Go out and get the school supplies. Go out and even if you don't need a new wardrobe, order some clothes online. My son, who's remoting in, I got him a flag for his, satellite campus. He really liked it. That was, he just liked having a little flag outside of his room. So do little things that can make your child happy and yourself happy, small things. So I do think, taking care of yourself is important, and trying to focus on being optimistic.
Okay, so we do have another question. How can you manage to meet each child's needs when you have more than one kid at home, different age group? It's complicated, even trying to adapt to this. Any tips on how you deal when you have more than one age group at home?
Yeah, I guess that's me.
I think so.
I'm not going to say it's not a challenge, but spring did not go well. So, it was even probably 3 weeks ago that my rising seventh grader said to me, "Can you just homeschool me?" I thought, oh, no, no, not really. But then it really made me step back and say that's how much he really disliked what went on in the spring, that he felt he really didn't learn anything and there wasn't enough interaction. And that's not faulting the district. It's faulting just life. I mean, we were all thrown into this completely. So I had to just empathize with him, say, I was thrown into a big change too. At work, we had to cancel things. And for you, we had to cancel things. I was looking forward to you to going to your swimming meet, all different kinds of things. So really just talking to him about that. But as far as getting them ready, I mean, doing some of the things that I talked about is just preparing them and helping them visualize. If your kid rides the bus, you need to talk to them about how different that's going to look. But as far as remote, it's tough. It's really tough to know that they're going to be home. But I think that's when you've got to get your posse in place, get whatever it's going to be, whether you have in-laws who can help, or if your spouse is working remotely also, or owns their own business, they've got to be able to make their time flexible. I mean, if you have a job where you have to be somewhere, if you're a teacher, or you have a job where you have to be at a different location other than home, then you've just got to think through what other possibilities there can be. I know that some people are creating pods. I'm not advocating it. I'm just saying I know that they're trying to do that, like with a few different families that they've been associating with. I mean, it's something I know Department of Health calls it a bubble. They had mentioned a couple months ago, create yourself a bubble of a few families or a few neighbors that you do interact with over the summer. And you're all healthy and you're all safe. So within that bubble, if people are creating pods, then that's a way to help each other and still keep healthy. I hope that helps.
I just wanted to jump in quickly because I've raised 4 children at very different age levels, and I don't think it's different in COVID, but it's the same as it always is. You have to really focus yourself on that student's level at that time. And sometimes it's the ones for whom it's going smoothly. Don't always ignore them. Focus on all of them equally, even if one is the more difficult, or not more difficult, has more challenges, because that one for things is going smoothly, that may have issues, coming up. So it's hard. There's no doubt, but it's hard in general times anyway, I think so.
Okay, so thank you, Andrew and Miriam and Marie. We have no more questions. I hope everybody found this to be very informative. Once again, we are an organization that provides support, resources, education programs. Please give us a call. Our number is 914-592-5458. Our website is nemiwestchester.org, and we provide everything with no charge. So we rely on memberships and donations, and you certainly can do that through our website as well. We hope to run these monthly presentations every month. We're working on next month's right now, so keep aware of your emails coming in, and we'll let you know what the next one is about. And thank you all for joining us tonight. And thank you again, Marie, Andrew, and Miriam.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for hosting this, Sharon and Marie, and thank you, Andrew, as well. And
thank you all
the parents and individuals who are attending to just give attention to this important topic. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye,
you, everyone,
everybody.
for joining.
Goodbye.
Good night.
Night.